everybody. I'm Captain Jeff Monroe. I'm the Director of Education and Standards with the International Association of Maritime Port Executives. And I'd like to welcome you to our program today. And as most of you who have been following us on podcasts and other things that, we like to talk to professionals in the industry. And we're very happy to be with Ed McCarthy, who's the Chief Operating Officer of the Georgia Ports Authority here in Savannah, Georgia. And we're very lucky. We just finished a course here with some of his new people and some of his top people. And it was really a great experience with everybody, as always, which we always appreciate the support from our ports. And Ed and I go back a fairly long time. I remember when we were both a lot younger. And Ed and Griff Lynch, who's the CEO here, were both students at the State University of New York Maritime College. So a great success story from your time of graduating. Did you ever think back then that that's where you're going to wind up?
No. Back then, I had no idea. Actually, I wanted to go to sea, and I was waiting for Maritime Overseas to offer me a third mate's job. Never happened. So, no, I had no idea where I was headed, but Sealand gave me an opportunity to be a superintendent down on the berth, and just made the best of it ever since.
The rest is history, so to speak. So tell us a little bit about what's going on here in the Port of Savannah and Brunswick and all the things that are underneath your purview.
Absolutely. So right now, operationally speaking, there's the whole operation side of the house, and then there's the engineering side of the house, the CapEx projects that we're working on. And then we need to make sure it's secure with our port police. So there's about 1,600 employees in the operations, port police, and engineering departments, maintenance departments. And, it's a lot to keep tabs of each day, but, we're blessed to have a great management team, great organization, well-trained people, both locally and who come from outside the industry into the port. But we've got about $1.9 billion worth of projects going on right now, not only trying to keep up with about 5 million TEUs of containers every day or every year, and then over 700,000 roll-on, roll-off pieces of equipment down in Brunswick. But we have the largest single container terminal in the Western Hemisphere and the largest auto facility in the U.S.
And the fastest growing.
So we're number 3 as far as container ports in the U.S. LA Long Beach number 1, New York, New Jersey number 2. We're number 3, and then only behind Baltimore right now is number 2 on the auto side. So the CapEx projects where we've renovated Berth 1, which was over a $200 million project, that came online in September. We can now work 16,000 TEU ships there. We got 6 brand new ship-to-shore cranes in that berth. We have in the rail operation we opened up in March earlier this year. That's a 2 million TEU. It's the largest on-dock rail facility, I think, in the Western Hemisphere as well. But it's got over 51,000 feet of working track, another over 100,000 feet of storage track. We can work 6 unit trains at one time, at the same time store 6 unit trains. So a lot of growth opportunity in rail, a lot of growth opportunity on the berth. And we've done expansion projects inside the terminal to expand our capacity. We can now handle over 100,000 containers stored on the ground. So a lot of growth. We're planning for the future, and we've kicked off Ocean Terminal Project, which is an expansion of, it wasn't a mixed use facility. We had autos, break bulk, and containers there. We're going to convert that to a sole container facility. That just kicked off earlier in January. We'll probably not get that started up until maybe Q4 of 2025 will be the first operations over there. But that's just no small take on that one. Just a little bit over $1 billion on that project.
Just a little pocket change for, at least for whomever.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but we've actually moved some of that cargo that's in Ocean Terminal down to Brunswick, the autos and stuff. So we spent over $300 million, or close to $300 million down in Brunswick to try and expand that facility to move some of that cargo around the state.
And you're the 300-pound gorilla here in the Southeast. There's no question about that. But you're serving customers that are all over the country right now. You've got excellent rail connections, with CSX and Norfolk Southern, right? And a lot of the people who ship cargo, ship it from other locations around the country and stuff. So what do you think the real measure of how did you get there? What was the measure of success in trying to pull that all off and to become who you are today as a port?
So predecessors before me, you had Doug Marchand, Curtis Foltz, Griff Lynch, and opportunities to step into the chief operating role. The goal was not to just sweat the asset and build it as you need it. Georgia Ports, going back to the late 90s, early 2000s, was whatever we think our capacity is and whatever our 10-year plan is. Every 2 years, we do a 10-year plan to forecast out. We get economists from all over the world, Europe, US, and Asia, and they're giving us their inputs about what they think is going to grow here in the Southeast, coming from Asia, coming from Europe, the Middle East, India. We boil that into a study every year. We call it the Focus. Focus this year is going to be 2034 study.
Mhm.
And we project where we're going to go over the next 10 years and what do we need to do infrastructure wise to make sure that whatever the throughput is, that we have a 20% buffer of capacity. And so we can absorb when there's an anomaly, a pandemic. We didn't do a great job during the pandemic. We did the best we could.
Don't feel bad, nobody did.
But for many years, for over 20 years, that has served us very well. And having that buffer of capacity to make sure that when we have a high growth year, we can absorb it.
So it seems like you've really embraced strategic planning as a key aspect of getting to success for the future.
Absolutely.
And everything. And of course, gathering the information is something that we focus very heavily on, in the course program and stuff. But it was very interesting. This is about the 5th consecutive year that we've done training here. In fact, the Georgia Ports Authority has the largest number of trained managers and executives of all the ports in the United States right now, which is something that, we're very, very happy to see. And good people, your young people coming in, your older people and stuff like. And I think in the long run is that you see the fact that they really are caught up in the aspect of, we want to do a good job, right? And we know the port's going someplace. We're really committed and everything, and very intrigued. Even some of your new folks who took the program this week, right? We're very intrigued about, what happens in the world, what happens in the industry, and all of, how do we make this more successful? And I think that's really team building more than it is anything else. And it seems like you have good quality people across the board.
Again, we go through an arduous hiring process and then training process.
Mm-hmm.
When I was with APM Terminals, Sealand before that, we had a worldwide network of terminal operators, experience. We're the Georgia Port Authority, and we're a niche location in the Southeast of the United States. And to have that global perspective and that global network, it's a little challenging now. So your course actually gives our team that exposure to the global supply chain. Some of the best reviews of any of the programs we run here come out of the IAMPE program. And the interesting thing is that our assistant managers, we do both programs, what I would call the entry-level program, where they are learning about what's going on, not only in the container trade and in the break bulk trade. You're coming in, you're teaching them stuff about what's going on in the petroleum industry, what's going on in the large container, the LNG industry. And that's a perspective that, as a port operator who has basically row and container operation, they don't get that perspective. So that's one aspect. And then when you go into the port infrastructure, port development program, that's for our more senior people who are coming along and been trained been with us 3 to 5 years. They actually come away with an appreciation, and they'll actually say, Ed, I have no idea what you think about every day.
You're going like, you're not paid enough, Ed.
Right. No.
But, I think in the long run, and the courses developed are really out of hard experience in many cases. When I was a deputy port director up in Boston and stuff like that, we were a fully operating authority. So we had the issues we dealt with on both sides of the fence, not only taking care of the ships, but taking care of the terminals. Right. And then, of course, by the time I got to Portland, then I got to play with the airport. And I always discovered that aviation folks have got a lot more money than the port folks do in most cases. But team building was the most important thing, because I think in the long run, you recognize that it's the team. We lead the team, and they're the ones that do the hard work, they're the ones who do the accomplishment. And I have to say, your team had some very great compliments about how things work here at the Georgia Port. And you don't always hear it that way. and you also see that in many cases, people are focused on the local fires.
Right.
What's the political issue today? What's the issue we have to deal with? You come in on Monday morning with a long list of things you can get done this week, and next thing you know, you're doing this call, you're talking to that guy, you're taking care of this issue, you got a shipper problem, you got a crane problem, and it goes on and on and on and on. And it's about not only being proactive, I think, but also being reactive as well.
Right.
And how do you see, I know training is a key factor of that, but how do you build your teams and how do you use strategic planning to get everybody, into the funnel, so to speak?
Well, I think it first starts with our values. One is we start off with safety. That's our number one value, making sure people are going home every day the way they came to work, keeping them safe. But then it comes down to integrity and respect, making sure that we're treating other people as we wish to be treated. And that's not only at the management level, it goes throughout every part of the organization, our vendors on terminal, the trucking community, making sure that we're doing the same with our customers. So it really, that's the foundation of what you build everything else on. So then we go through training, not only your courses, we do Dale Carnegie courses for the management people as well. But when we hire someone who is going into a piece of equipment, jockey truck training, we'll spend 6 weeks to 3 months training them in a jockey truck, making sure they're proficient. When they graduate from that program, and we have openings in the rail-mounted gantry crane, we'll spend 8 weeks to 3 months training them in there. Our longest training program is with our ship-to-shore cranes. We'll spend 9 months to a year training someone before they're released on a ship-to-shore crane. And they have to, every one of those positions have to meet certain metrics and goals. So that is, not only it's our values, it's our training, and then finally building the infrastructure and the operational plan. We literally sit down on a weekly basis and we'll talk about not only Garden City, what brownfield projects we need to do, how do we expand the gates, how do we expand the rail, and everything needs to be expanded uniformly. If we build, 1,500 acres of property, but we don't have the gates to service the trucking community, it's a failure. If we don't build the rail out to meet the demand of what's coming off the vessels to get onto the rail, or the exporter is sending rail into us. So everything has to be built at an even pace. So right now, the past 2 years, we took a berth out of operation to retrofit it. That's the Berth 1 program. And it took us 2 years of pain. Our customers had to deal with ships at anchor. We couldn't work as many ships as we wanted to. So it wasn't an easy decision. But now that we're past it, I think everyone is seeing it was the right decision. We can work larger ships as ocean carriers upsize their vessels from 9 and 10 and 11,000 TU ships to 13, 14, and 16,000 TU ships. We now have the capacity to handle those ships. So it's really that focused strategic planning, making sure the operations team and the engineering and the IT team are sitting in the same room, going through that plan and developing it together, not just doing it in a box.
I think one of the most important things that we try to emphasize with our people is you really need to know what's going on around you, and you really need to understand what's happening and what, to the extent that you can, to look to the future. So based on that, where do you see the industry over the next couple of years, and how do you see that impacting the Georgia Ports Authority?
Well, like I said, we're doing our 10-year plan, and the economists are, one guy will tell you 2024 is just going in the tank, and the other guys say, oh no, sky's the limit. So we're trying to, balance out what that growth is. We do think that 2024 is going to be a little bit of a challenge on the container side. On the automotive side, we've had a very strong 2023, and we see that going into 2024. But after 2024, I think every economist we're talking to for the southeast of the United States, there's a couple things going on. Not only is there a population base from the northeast and even the west coast moving into the southeast of the United States, but I think we have 6 of the 7 fastest growing states in the entire United States here. So there's a population change. There's also a manufacturing renaissance going on. We've had more automotive manufacturing growing here with Rivian and Hyundai and their suppliers here in Georgia, in the South Atlanta. You got VW up in Tennessee, some guys up in South Carolina. They're all building manufacturing plants. So we're seeing people coming in for those jobs as well. And then finally, we're seeing a change in source shifting. So right now, China for the last 20, 30 years has been the big behemoth. Previously, they were 47, 48% of the Georgia Port Authority's inbound volume. In the past 4 years, they've dropped down into the high 30 percentile, where we've seen Korea, Vietnam, Malaysia, Singapore, and then into India shifting. So it's really the China plus one program. They're moving out of China. They can't be solely dependent on China, so let's find some other locations. And instead of coming through the Panama Canal to the East Coast, which is probably 7 days longer than going over the West Coast to the Midwest, if you come through the Suez Canal from Southeast Asia to the East Coast of the US, it's actually 5 days faster than the West Coast. So we're seeing it starting to shift, and I think over the next decade, we're going to see a tremendous shift. So that's why I think the Southeast of the United States, the whole East Coast of the United States, is going to see a tremendous growth.
I see that, China has had a little uptick in exports, but most of it's heading into Asia ports and stuff. So, there's growth in that area and stuff. The whole industry in the container trade is down 20%. But I think one of the things that you use as a successful model is you have a diversified base of cargo. We tend to think of containers as being the quintessential cargo because we make the most money on it. And automobile's not that far behind. But you also handle other cargoes. You handle break bulk cargo, you handle bulk cargo and everything. And I think one of the emphasis we always try to make is that you really want to have a diversified mix of cargoes, diversified revenue streams, because ultimately everything changes, based on their own individual cycles and everything.
Absolutely.
You've got great intermodal connectivity here. You've had the roadway systems put in place, and that has worked out well. So Savannah really becomes a port of choice for many in the Southeast. And quite frankly, for many up in the Northeast and the Midwest and everything else like that, which is pretty phenomenal. I'm astounded to see just since last year when I was here, how much new warehousing space there is, how much more traffic there is.
Right.
And maybe South Carolina someday will expand that to a third lane so we can get some of that traffic jam out of Georgia. But the fact of the matter is, it is a growth spurt. And I think in many ways, we're going to see a redeployment of what's going to happen with ships. I think you're going to wind up with more ship calls here. I mean, you already got an extensive berth system here and a well laid out yard and everything. And considering the volume that goes through this port is pretty phenomenal. So I think, it's good to see. And it's particularly good to see someone, who's graduated from maritime college, somebody who's come up through the industry, which is what you did. However, fate takes us,
Exactly.
Yeah, fate took me to sea, then fate took me to the college, and then fate took me to the port industry and everything like that. So I like to tell people I couldn't hold down a job. But how do you see the pathway? How has that pathway affected you in your growth to get you where you are today?
Well, I think going to the opportunity was the key for me. So I started in Port Elizabeth, New Jersey, with Sealand. And for me, it was really transitioning from or cross-training. I started in the Marine Department with loading and discharging ships, managing the ILA in Sealand's Berth 88. And then an opportunity opened up as a lateral move into equipment control department and then gate department. I even went to the into purgatory, which I call was chassis maintenance.
Oh God, yeah.
But that was years ago. That was maintaining chassis. Now we're doing a great job in the industry trying to upgrade chassis to be more roadworthy, which is a much safer opportunity. But I think it's a lot of lateral moves to gain that experience at the lower level, because I think it makes you a stronger manager when you get up to the next level. And then eventually, if you grow your career into a port director or whatever position you're going towards in port operation, it just makes you much stronger. I ended up going to the West Coast in a lateral move, getting experience with the ILWU on the West Coast, and then ended up in a corporate position, starting to build and design terminals, kind of like my first strategic planning job when I was in my mid-30s. And that was a lot of fun because I got to work on projects, started traveling around the country and around the globe with APM terminals at that point. And then I ended up on the Virginia project with APM terminals, building the first semi-automated container terminal in the United States. That's how I got to be friends with CMA CGM. And I ended up, they became my customer. I eventually went to go work for CMA, which was a shift to the ocean carrier side and learning, getting a deeper knowledge, again, lateral move, but getting a deeper knowledge of trucking, rail operation, the inland port operation. And I think that set me up for the opportunity here in Georgia. I had a vast amount of knowledge, and when the recruiter called to come to what I consider the best port in the U.S., I took a shot at it, and I was fortunate to get the job.
I think it always makes the best sense. That was part of the reason why, when I left Boston, because I had the opportunity now to run an airport and get involved in the rail operations and everything. And it was funny, my airport manager was introducing me to the station guys, and I go like, well, this is Captain Jeff Monroe, blah, 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 blah. Right. Of course, the station manager says, oh, what type of aircraft do you fly? I go like, oh, yeah, I've been on 747s and I've been on, Dash 8s. I've been on that and everything. Wow, you're really qualified. And finally he says, no, he's a boat captain. And they're all looking at each other going like, a boat captain running an airport? He says, come on, boats have propellers, planes have propellers. What's the difference? What advice would you give to young people? And what's fascinating is how many more women, over a third of the people we train now are women coming into the industry and taking senior positions, and as Beth Rooney up in New York, Barbara Melvin over in Charleston, and Brandy Christian over in New Orleans, people who have really aspired that it was never that type of an industry. But what advice would you give people to young people who are aspiring, like the young people who are in our course this week? What path should they take, and what should they be most concerned about as their career growth?
It's funny that you asked me that question. So I have a 22-year-old son, 23-year-old daughter, 24-year-old son. And they're asking me the same questions, like, what do I need to do in my career? What do I need to do to get ahead? And the first thing I tell them is, you need to be patient. Okay. When I was 24 years old, I was like, how do I get to be the port director at Sealand and port? And I made an appointment with the vice president who was running the port. I said, Bill, is there a way that, how do I get to your job? And he basically was willing to open up and share his path. And I think probably one of the most important things is find a mentor. Mentorship, find someone who doesn't need to be a senior level manager, maybe 2 or 3 levels above you. If you're assistant manager or a superintendent or just entry level position, find someone who's a manager who's got 5 or 10 years ahead of you, and just ask them what they did and would they coach you or mentor you. What can I do in my interpersonal skills to improve? What can I do in my presentation skills to improve? What can I do in just general management? Am I treating people like I want to be treated? Stuff like that.
And that's a difficult thing sometimes, because we are an industry of challenges.
Yes.
Right. And not always of being a polite industry. Right. But we're certainly coming out of that's gotten better. So, well, I have to tell you, I'm very proud. It's always interesting when you're a professor at a college to see what happens to the students who have been through. And I estimate between IAMPE and the colleges at both Mass and at New York that I've got like 4,000 students who have had to suffer through my lectures, right? And my daughter kind of asked me the same question. Actually, she did. She told me what she was going to do. She came on one day and she says, Pop, what do you think of me going to sea? And after I kind of gasped for breath, I said, well, honey, if that's what you want to do. And, of course, she made it all the way up to captain. So nice to have people following in your footsteps and everything. So, and I think that's a solid piece of advice. That's part of the reason why I tell everybody who takes our course, if you ever have questions, just give us a call. Right. I know we're happy to talk to you. And if I can answer a question for you, we'll have somebody that we can tie you into and stuff like that. Well, I know our time has come to an end, and I appreciate very much the time we've spent here. And I always great to get back here to Savannah and stuff like that. I've been invited to take a tour of the Brunswick facility, so I'm going to be looking forward to that as well and everything. And so I appreciate all the hospitality, there's everything every year. And it's great to have more of your people in our program and stuff. And we'll look forward to getting back here again.
Captain, I really appreciate you coming down. I appreciate the time with the audience. And if they want to come down and see Port Savannah and go on a tour, just let us know. We're happy to have it.
They'll all be envious. And thank you.
Thank you.
All right.